I've got a lot of books on the floor right here and I want to talk about them. I've seen this trend going around mostly on Bookstagram, but I have seen a few booktubers do it as well, where I talk about the first book I read from an author, but what's my favorite book from that same author. I'm going to be talking about my favorite authors. Most of them are pretty popular, so you've probably heard of them, but really it's just books that I've read multiple books of, more than 4. I wanted to start with Christina Lauren. I feel like they were one of the first contemporary rom-com books that I got into. I first read The Unhoneymooners, and my favorite book from them is The Unhoneymooners. I rated this book 5 stars, and I think it's the only book from them that I've rated 5 stars. Could not get over this book. I think I read it in early 2022. A subscriber actually sent it to me. Taylor, thank you very much. I would not have picked up Christina Lauren if Taylor did not send this book to me. This book is about Olive and Ethan. I genuinely remember laughing out loud during this book. It was the first romance book that had made me laugh, and I found it so funny and palatable. There were so many cute tropes in this book too. It's mostly forced proximity, enemies to lovers. I think enemies to lovers is kind of hard to do in contemporary romance, but they did a really good job. It has been a little bit since I've read this, so I would like to reread it just to make sure it's still 5 stars. If you guys hear the lawnmower, I'm sorry, it'll go away soon. Olive and Ethan are at a wedding, and they are the only 2 people at this wedding that don't get food poisoning from the catering there, and they end up going on the honeymoon that the original bride and groom were supposed to go on. Given that they're enemies, they don't really want to go on this honeymoon together, but they both think it'll be a waste. There's a little bit of fake dating involved, and there is only one bed trope if that's what you're into as well. To start off this first and favorites video, I wanted to get the one book out of the way. So first book that I read from them and favorite. I think I've read 8 books from Christina Lauren. I love them, but this one's still my favorite. The next author is Elle Kennedy, and I was introduced to her by my friend Jane on Bookstagram. I've talked about Jane a few times on here. First Elle Kennedy book that I read was The Deal, which makes kind of sense because it's the first book in her off-campus series. Hannah and Garrett. Garrett is a hockey player, Hannah is a singer, and they're kind of like opposites attract in a way. Wow, did I fall in love with Elle Kennedy's writing when I read this book. It was published in 2015, and I think it shows. I think her new books are different, and I want to get into that. Favorite Elle Kennedy book, I just read this one last month, is The Dixon Roll. This one, absolutely love this book. It's about Shane and Diana, and these 2 books are connected. It's a little complicated to say. So Hannah and Garrett had a kid named Gigi. Gigi's best friend is Diana. So this is Diana's book. Gigi's book was The Graham Effect, and I loved that one as well. But this one, all-time favorite for sure. I think her new books have this different mature feel. There's a lot more communication. There's a lot of depth in the characters, where these ones, there is depth. Like this one's just different. She's just kind of upping the ante with the plot in these books, and I'm enjoying them so much more, even though that I loved this book and it's the first one that I read. It'll always have a special place in my heart. First, favorite. Oh my god, my legs are going numb. I don't know why I decided to do this on the floor. The next author, I feel like she's kind of controversial. Not really, but it's Emily Henry. I first read Beach Read from her, and I think this obviously like had its time. It blew up, and it's a beautifully written book. It's about Gus and January. They're 2 writers. They're angsty. There's a lot going on. It's super, super sweet. Very like women's lit. Loved this book, and it was a good introduction to Emily Henry, and that's why I continued reading her. And my favorite book from her is People We Meet on Vacation. I want to do a reread because I just read Funny Story, and that's like tied with People We Meet on Vacation. I feel like it's one or the other. You either love Beach Read and you don't like this one, or you love this one and don't like Beach Read. Like I've never heard of someone equally liking the 2. Loved the flashback chapters in this, and I think second chance romance is one of my favorite tropes. So I was a sucker for this one, and I think Alex was so sweet. I kind of don't remember Poppy, but I remember Alex a lot. This one got me into her, and I was like, wow, this is great. I can't wait to read her next book. And then I read this one, so yay. The next author, I actually haven't read a book from her in a while, but it's Taylor Jenkins Reid. The first book that I read from her was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I did give this one 5 stars, and I remember being convinced that Evelyn Hugo was actually a real person. Like I remember Googling her multiple times. I was like, come on, this has to be based off someone real. Like who is this story about? Evelyn Hugo just seemed so real to me. But my favorite book, Oh, Daisy Jones and the Six. This one is just so unique. It's not really that unique, like it's just an interview. Audiobook changed my life. And the quotes, the audiobook and the quotes really did it for me. It's just a unique story about love and how there's so many different kinds of love that you can have. Actually, I'm gonna throw up some quotes on the screen because let's reminisce. Okay, I missed this book. First favorite. Honestly, they both were 5 stars to me, but this one was just different, you know? The next author is Elle Hazelwood. Of course, I can't go through this video without talking about her. I've read 8 of her books. Granted, 3 of them were novellas, but I don't know, I read a lot from her and I really love her work. I've read all of her books actually, I guess, right? Is that all she's written? First book that I read, probably like every single one of you, was The Love Hypothesis. When it first originally blew up, I was so into this book for the longest time. This one I did give 5 stars. Now, here's the thing, I haven't rated another Elle Hazelwood book 5 stars. So you would think like this one's my favorite. And I do think it is, but I really need to reread it because I remember, Love Theoretically, I remember liking even more, but now I'm confused because I rated this one 3.5 and I rated this one 5. So I don't know, like I don't think I remember enough from this book. Actually, I do. I remember a lot from this book, but I think I would need to read them back to back to really decide. Forget about Love Theoretically. Technically, this was the first and my favorite book from Elle Hazelwood. Maybe because it was my first Elle Hazelwood, I kind of clung to it a little bit different. People want to hate it. Like, people don't want to like it. Like, I've heard a lot of hate on this book, yet the ratings on it are so good. Like, I think people secretly really love this book. I'm not 100% solid that this is my favorite book from her because they are all pretty similar. Like, Love on the Brain, they have the same tropes. Like, it's kind of just copy and paste, but I feel like this one was better. I just don't remember this one enough to say that this one's better. You know, I don't know. That's a tough one, but another romance author, we have Abby Jimenez. The first book that I read from her was Yours Truly. I kind of read this one out of order. I don't even think I've read the first book from this yet. I actually read it in this video right here a while back when you guys recommended it to me. Fell in love with Abby Jimenez's writing with this one. It just was so different than what I'm used to. Like, yes, most of the romance books that I read, I feel like have good depth, but the characters are so interesting in her books and they just have such a different feel. Did rate this one 4 stars because I remember not liking Brianna, the main female character, as much as I liked Jacob. I remember Brianna, it was so frustrating. Jacob would like express something, but Brianna wouldn't let him finish a sentence. And I was like, girl, stop interrupting him. Let him finish. He's already anxious. He's already nervous. Let him finish. Just for the Summer came out this year and this one's my favorite. I think this book has everything that I want in a romance book. It has a little bit of trauma. It's got a little bit of comedy. It's a little spicy. Like, it just has so many elements that I look for in a romance book. It just equaled a 5-star read. Right from the very beginning to like the first chapter, I was already into it. The Reddit post, the meet cute in this one was just perfect. I loved both, but this one takes the cake for sure. And like, I can't wait to read more of her books because I feel like she's still a new author to me, but she is an auto-buy author for me now. Like, any book that she comes out with, I will read now. Fredrik Backman. Now listen, he's definitely doesn't fit in with the books that I've just talked about. All of these have been romance books, but Fredrik Backman is one of my favorite authors. I've read a lot of books from him and I enjoy every single one. His characters are so flawed that most of his books are upsetting. They're tearjerkers and they're not like meant to make you happy in a really depressing, sad way. But the first book that I read was A Man Called Ove. This was the first non-romance book that made me emotional. One of the most heartwarming and charming books you'll ever read. Like, it was adorable. My favorite book from him is Beartown. Fell head over heels for these characters and their flaws and this community, the town. The town is so messed up and so wrong, but that's what makes it so real and raw and upsetting. And it's just like, you feel for the characters and what they're going through because they're going through something very traumatic, and it's splitting the town in two. First favorite, but I still love both, and I've read so many of his books and I can't wait to read more. His books are such good like book club books. If you want to have like interesting conversations with friends, I feel like his books are great because there's so many morals, values, and it's just different what everyone thinks probably about the same thing. I don't know. Mariana Zapata, I cannot get through this video without talking about her. I would say she's top 3 romance authors in general for me. Her slow burn romances always are good. She's actually statistically my favorite romance author because her books always get 4 or 5 stars. Like, I've never gone below 4 stars for her because they hit so hard. And I think any book that's over 600 pages, you're gonna get really close with the characters, you're gonna love them, and it's hard to not like them. But the first book that I read, and actually one of the first reading vlogs that I ever did, was with Colty. This one could be my favorite because I gave it 5 stars. I've given a lot of her books 5 stars, but this is a stalker romance. Everyone knows that she's a slow burn author, but no, slow. Most of it, like this much of it is slow. And then it really picks up in the end, and that's how all of her books are. But I could not decide Winnie Peg and Me or All Roads Lead Here. I'm gonna have to say All Roads Lead Here only because Winnie Peg, there's a little bit of like bullying, like he's just unnecessarily mean in that one, and I don't love that, but I did give it 5 stars because it's so good. It's an interesting meet cute on how they like get together, but she ends up renting his upstairs garage area, but he doesn't know it, and just the pacing, and there's like a little bit of mystery in there as well. The small town and Rhodes, he's so sweet, but he's also not. He's really grumpy. I don't think I've ever talked to someone who doesn't like her books. So the last author, and I feel like I have to talk about her, so you can click out now if you don't want to hear it, but it's Sarah J. Maas. I love her. The first book that I read, A Court of Thorns and Roses, this introduced me to her writing and to the series that literally started this channel, so thank you. I think I gave it 3 stars in my recent reread. I'm a little torn. My favorite book from her is Kingdom of Ash because it's 1,000 pages and you're so invested in the series. It's also the last book of a series, so it should be the favorite in my opinion. Like, it should be just as good as it is, but I feel like that's a little cliche. So I want to give my second favorite, and that's A Court of Silver Flames. I feel so hard for Nesta, and I think that she is such a controversial character that I love her even more. And I love that she's not a loved character, but I feel like those who love her, we get her. Like, we get her, we understand her. Like, she's a bitch, she's always gonna be a bitch, but I love her. If you didn't like it the first time, I suggest rereading it and just like take your time. Underline things, understand what she's going through, get those like tiny subtle hints that she's giving that really she's like a good person. She just is miserable. So that is it for this video. That was a lot of books, and now I have to put them away on my shelf. But thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed or if you agree with me, please comment down below, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.